Here we're trying to graph 3 sine theta plus 1. I'm going to identify some important characteristics first, starting with my midline, because that's the first thing I'm going to graph. So midline is y is equal to 1. I'm not even going to use the graph that's given here, just because that's really hard for me to see what's going on there. So if I go up 1 from my x-axis, we have a midline of 1. I like to take care of all the vertical stuff first. So I'm actually going to skip over to D and talk about the amplitude. Here the amplitude is 3. And what that means to me is that I'm going to go 3 points above and 3 points below. And those are going to be kind of the boundaries for my graph. I like setting it up this way just so that I kind of know what's going on. And I don't have to deal with solving for lots of x and y values separately. The other piece of this is knowing that the sine mother function should look something like this. And the 5 points that we're going to find are going to be our 3 points on the midline, 1 point above and 1 point below. And the trick is just kind of figuring out where those points are. To do that, we're going to think about dealing with the period and the phase shift. So if I take a look at this, we've got just a theta on the inside, which is really helpful. Since nothing is changing on the inside horizontally, this is going to have our original period of 2 pi and a phase shift that does not exist, so phase shift of 0. That means that my points are going to be at 0 and then at 2 pi. I'm going to cut those exactly in half to get pi, and here are my 3 midline points. How beautiful is that? Next, I'm going to cut these in half again, and we've got pi over 2, and we've got 3 pi over 2. That's going to be my upper point, that's this guy, and my lower point. Once I have those going on, I'm going to connect them, and if I really want to be snazzy, I might identify these points as 0, 1, I lied there. This is going to be pi over 2, comma 4. We've got pi, comma 1. We've got 3 pi over 2, comma negative 2. And we've got 2 pi, comma 1. Next up, we've got 1/2 cosine of theta minus pi over 4 minus 1. I'm going to start off the same way, which is to find my midline. And here I've got a midline of negative 1. So I'm going to draw my midline first. And I might even make this a little bit larger because I just noticed that the amplitude's only a half. So I'm going to leave enough room there just so I can see what's going on. We've got a negative 1 midline. Looking at then my amplitude, which is going to be a half, I'm going to go half above this. This is why I left a lot of room. And I'm just going to mark some boundaries just so I can see the top and the bottom of this before I start trying to graph this. My cosine mother function is going to look like this. Here's my midline. I've got 2 points on the midline, 2 up top, 1 below. Some have accused this of looking like a reindeer or a puppy. And then I'm going to try to figure out some of the other pieces here. I've got nothing multiplied by my variable, so my period is going to be 2 pi, although I do have a phase shift term here. And looking at this, if we set our theta minus pi over 4 is equal to 0, and theta minus pi over 4 is equal to 2 pi, that'll give us our 2 outside values. The first part's going to give us theta is equal to pi over 4. The second part, I need to do some common denominators. 2 pi is the same as 8 pi over 4. So when I add that, I get theta is equal to 9 pi over 4. Okay, let's mark those places. So we've got pi over 4, and we've got 9 pi over 4. My cosine is positive, and because I have these 2 endpoints, those are my 2 top cosine values. Exactly in the middle of those two, so I'm going to take the average. We've got 1 plus 9 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. That's 5 pi over 4. and cosine there should be all the way at the bottom. Okay. I'm going to cut those in half again and just find the averages. 1 plus 5 is 6. Divide by 2 gives me 3 pi over 4. And that's going to be a midline point. And then we've got 5 plus 9 is 14. Divided by 2 is going to be 7. So 7 pi over 4. And that's going to be another middle value. A nice smooth curve connecting those. And again, if you want to be a really snazzy human being, let's add some coordinates to these. So we've got pi over 4, negative a half. We've got 3 pi over 4, comma, negative 1. We've got 5 pi over 4, comma, negative 3 over 2. We've got 7 pi over 4, comma, negative 1. And then we've got 9 pi over 4, comma, negative 1/2. Bada bing.